Gorilla always believed chocolate was proof that life could be simple, sweet, warm, uncomplicated. So when Gorilla decided to open a chocolate factory, it didn't feel like a business decision. It felt like becoming a kid again. Gorilla imagined golden gates, a river of chocolate, steam rising like a warm hug, free samples for everyone, children laughing, adults pretending they were just checking quality. Gorilla imagined a life where the biggest decision of the day was dark or milk. First, though, Gorilla needed money, so Gorilla walked into a bank wearing his best smile and his only tie. The loan officer asked for a business plan. Gorilla handed over a napkin with a drawing of a chocolate waterfall and the words, "Trust me," underlined twice. The loan officer did not laugh. The loan officer asked for it again, properly, in writing, with numbers. Gorilla spent 3 days learning what projected revenue meant, mostly by guessing, mostly wrong. Eventually, the loan came through. Gorilla signed the lease with a grin so wide it looked illegal. Day 1, Gorilla stood in the empty factory and whispered, "Finally, something soft in this hard world." Bamboo in hand, chest calm, not a single beat. Then the cocoa supplier called. Prices had shifted. Gorilla laughed. Chocolate is basic. How complicated can cocoa be? Very complicated, apparently. Cocoa prices move like a heartbeat monitor during a horror movie. Up, down, up, way up. Nobody knows why. Everybody blames the harvest. Gorilla stared at a spreadsheet like it had personally insulted his mother. Then came the electricity bill. Turns out chocolate has a mood. It melts if you look at it wrong. Keeping chocolate chocolate-shaped requires refrigeration, temperature control, humidity control, and apparently a small prayer to the tempering gods. Gorilla didn't know chocolate needed therapy just to stay solid. One afternoon, a single bar melted slightly in the display case. Gorilla treated it like a hostage situation. Full army crawl across the factory floor, binoculars out, whispering, stay calm," to a chocolate bar that was, at most, mildly disappointed in itself. That's when Gorilla realized something. In this business, softness is the enemy. Ironic, for a gorilla who just wanted something soft in his life. Then came packaging. Gorilla thought a wrapper was just a wrapper. Turns out wrappers need branding, printing, foil lining, recyclability certificates, and a font that conveys premium warmth. Gorilla spent 4 hours picking a shade of brown. 4 hours. For brown. The color that already exists on literally every tree Gorilla has ever slept under. Then came the tempering machine. Gorilla named it Steve, mostly out of fear. Steve broke down every single time a big order came in. Never before, never after, only during. Gorilla began to suspect Steve had opinions, possibly a union. There was also a fly. One single fly that appeared on day 1 and never left, always landing on the freshest tray at the worst possible moment. Gorilla tried everything. Nets, bribery, a stern talking to. The fly simply blinked and stayed. Gorilla stopped fighting it. The fly became, unofficially, quality control. Then came the seasons. Valentine's Day arrived and suddenly everyone loved chocolate. Everyone. Orders exploded. Machines ran non-stop. Gorilla didn't sleep. Gorilla didn't blink. Gorilla started measuring time in cocoa batches instead of hours. Then, Valentine's Day ended. And so did everyone's love for chocolate. The factory went from sold out to please somebody, anybody, buy a truffle in exactly 4 days. Gorilla stood in a warehouse of unsold chocolate hearts, each one silently reminding him that love, like revenue, is seasonal. Then came staff. Gorilla hired workers expecting a joyful little chocolate family, like in the storybooks. Instead, Gorilla got shift schedules, sick days, a dispute about who gets to lick the spoon, and one employee who mysteriously vanished every time Steve the machine needed cleaning. Gorilla began to suspect Steve was cursed, possibly haunted, definitely judgmental. Then came the accountant, a small, calm creature who arrived quarterly like a tax-shaped storm cloud. The accountant slid a folder across the table and said one word: depreciation. Gorilla nodded slowly, as if he understood, and made a mental note to Google it later, urgently, in the dark, alone. Then came the health inspector. Gorilla welcomed him with pride, gesturing at the factory like a proud father. The inspector gestured back, at a crack in the floor tile, at a slightly too warm storage room, at a sign that said, "Employees must wash paws," instead of hands. Gorilla stared at the sign for a long time. Nobody corrected that. Nobody. The inspection took 6 hours. Gorilla's smile lasted about 6 minutes. Then came the internet. A chocolate influencer visited, filmed 30 seconds of golden factory footage, and captioned it, "Obsessed, but the customer service?" Gorilla had never even met this creature. The comments arrived like a swarm. Opinions from strangers who had never once melted a single gram of cocoa in their life. Gorilla read every comment. Twice. At 1 a.m., while Steve buzzed ominously in the background. By month 3, Gorilla's bamboo sat untouched on the desk. Gorilla picked it up out of habit, chewed once, tasted nothing, because when your brain is calculating cocoa futures at 2 a.m., bamboo doesn't stand a chance. Then the real damage started, not outside, inside. Gorilla began comparing his factory to bigger ones, shinier ones with mascots and cartoon rivers and fake historical charm. Gorilla started feeling like the chocolate wasn't the product anymore. Gorilla was the product. Exhausted, sugar-coated, slowly melting under pressure, just like the bar in the display case. One night, alone in the factory, surrounded by silent machines, even Steve finally quiet, Gorilla stood in front of a giant vat of half-finished chocolate. He beat his chest, once, twice, not in anger, in release, like trying to shake something loose that had been sitting on his ribs since the day he signed that lease. The chocolate river he once imagined? It existed. Technically. Except now it looked less like magic and more like a slow-moving flood of due invoices, wrapped in gold foil. Gorilla laughed. A tired laugh. The kind that isn't really about anything funny. "I wanted to build something sweet," Gorilla whispered. "I built something that owns me." That night, Gorilla dreamed about being small again. A kid, reaching toward a chocolate shop window, nose pressed to the glass, believing that whoever worked inside must be the happiest person alive. Gorilla woke up and realized something quiet and uncomfortable. Every happiest place is just somebody's Tuesday. Every dreamy little shop hides a spreadsheet behind the counter. Every sweetness the world enjoys was made by someone who, somewhere along the way, forgot what sweetness tasted like. Gorilla looked at the factory differently after that. Not with resentment, with respect. Because now Gorilla understood the truth chocolate never advertises. Softness has a cost. Softness takes discipline to protect. The version of life that looks effortless from the outside is usually the most engineered thing on the inside. Weeks passed. Gorilla adjusted. Slowly. Gorilla learned to separate identity from output. Learned that a bad sales month didn't mean a bad gorilla. Learned that melting under pressure was chemistry, not character. Gorilla even made peace with Steve, oiling his joints personally, muttering, "We're a team now," to a machine that, for the first time in months, didn't break down. One evening, a small child pressed her face against the factory window, eyes wide, utterly convinced that whoever worked inside must be the happiest creature alive. Old Gorilla would have felt the irony crush him. New Gorilla smiled, grabbed a small sample, walked outside, handed it to her without a word. Because somewhere in all that chaos, Gorilla remembered why he started. Not for the river, not for the fantasy, for that exact look on that kid's face. Gorilla walked back inside, picked up the bamboo from his desk, and finally, tasted it again. Calm, grounded, present. Somewhere behind him, the one loyal fly landed gently on a fresh tray, inspected it, and for once seemed satisfied. The chocolate business didn't get easier. Gorilla just got heavier hands and a lighter chest, because that's the hidden economics nobody puts on the label. The real cost of making something sweet is staying soft enough, long enough to still mean it.